Hi there, welcome to my channel. In today's video, we'll be talking about a backend over a social media application using Android Studio. For backend, as I told in the previous video, we'll be using mostly PHP. So I've opened up here many tools that will be useful for us to develop. So let's begin. Okay, the first tool that we need to set up is a composer. A composer is simply a dependency manager. It manages all the tools that you want to use while developing some application. It already comes as an exe file that you may download and just go ahead and install it. So the second thing that you need is PHP. I'm gonna leave all the links down below on the description so you can just click and download everything. So this is probably the main thing that we'll be covering on this video is XMPP. XMPP is really a powerful tool to test your applications on your local PC. It also comes within the exe file, so you can just download and follow the instructions. As for the PHP engine, I'm going to be using a framework. So there are a bunch of frameworks that you can use to whatever needs you have. So for this project, I'm going to use a Slim framework, the version 4. I'm going to input this link down below. It comes already with the Slim itself and PSR7, which is an additional packages to install Slim Skeleton and create a new project. You have to first have XMPP installed and go to the path of your XMPP. In this case, it's being a root folder. And inside the XMPP folder, you have htdocs. You have to copy the path to this folder. And by clicking Windows R and typing cmd, you'll have your command prompt open up. Inside, you type cd and just paste your path. It will direct to the folder that you've specified. In this case, it is being htdocs. And the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna create a new project using using Composer. So I type Composer, create project, slim/slim skeleton. Give it any name that you want. I'm gonna call it just social, whatever, social PHP. It will take a really quick to import all the packages and set up a system for you. It should take a couple of seconds. And now we have our project created. In order to launch the XMPP, you launch it as with the admin rights. You'll see this window popped up. In this window, you have all the tools that we'll be needing to develop our project. So the first thing that I'm going to use is Apache to set up the basic server and my PC. And MySQL is for the database. It uses a bit modified version of MySQL, which is Maria database. Now I'm going to launch first Apache, then MySQL. Everything is running. Now I can close this. It'll pop up on the navigation panel. So in order to use PHP, MyAdmin, and MySQL, I'm going to type localhost. It will open up a dashboard. This is just a simple page. And this page we have PHP MyAdmin that I'm going to click. So as you can see, I already created the database because I'm recording this video twice because the first one just got broken. So in order to create a database, I'm going to go and press new, give it any name that you want, social DB, leave the decoding as by default. And as you can see, it automatically created a package because we have two identical databases containing the type of social. If you want to manage your databases, delete or create a new one, you go to click to this text field, go to databases, and here you can manage all the database you have. In this case, I would like to delete the previous one. So I'm going to check it and I'm going to drop it. Now it's been successfully deleted. So I'm going to click to my database that I created. And we have two options of managing this database, either by typing SQL queries or just go ahead and use the graphical user interface and create it just by looking at it and using your mouse. So the first table that I'm gonna create is accounts table. So there is going to be two different tables describing the user. The first being accounts, the second one being users. The difference between them is that users will contain all the information about the user itself, and the accounts will contain the information about accounts, like a credit card or emails, password, a phone number, whatever. So as by the first one, we're gonna go ahead and create 3 columns. Yep, 3 columns. The first column is always being an ID, and of course I'm gonna mark the AI check. It goes for auto increment. It basically adds up the value as the field is being literally filled. When a new user logins, the number just increases automatically, so you don't have to manage it by yourself. And it should be a primary key, of course. The second is email field. It will contain, it might contain varchar or text. Whatever you may choose makes no sense actually. I'm going to choose varchar and type 200. This is the length the maximum length allowed to enter for the email field. And the last one is being password. The password is going to be, let's say, a text. Yep. No, actually, varchar would be okay too. Yeah, we can actually enter 120. That doesn't matter. You press save, and now we successfully created the first table in our database. It contains 3 columns, with the first one being always primary key. So now we have to edit our PHP project that we created a couple of minutes ago. To do so, I'm going to use a Visual Studio Code. You may use any text editor that you want. I'm going to open up the folder, and as you can see, we have social PHP folder created already. Using Visual Studio Code gives us almost the same window as we have in Android Studio. On the left side, we may see the hierarchy, which I call it as a navigation window, where all the project files are stored and shown. And on the middle, you have the coding space. As for now, we'll be mostly using 2 folders. The first one is being public. Public contains 2 files. The first one is .htxs. This file is very much important because it specifies the rights, and it either allows or denies the user to access this public folder. The second one is being index.php. Currently it has just a simple template and these weird code lines. We'll not use this at all. We'll just delete them later on. Index.php is like main activity in Android Studio. So this is probably the main file that we'll be working on in most cases. And now I'm going to create a new folder. And I'm going to call it includes. As you may have guessed by the name of this folder, it will contain all the includes. It will contain those files which are not available to a simple user, so that the simple user could not access this file. I'm not gonna create a new file first. I'm gonna first modify index.php. To do so, I'm gonna remove all these lines of code. These are just helper lines. The shortcut for saving any file in Visual Studio Code is just Ctrl S. So we can start actually setting up the first backend lines for our project. So I'm gonna open up the PHP. Let me just close it right ahead. First of all, as we already have in Android Studio, in Java classes, the first thing always coming is actually imports, right? So in PHP is exactly the same. I'm going to First of all, use three things: PSR, HTTP, message, server request interface. And I'm gonna define it as just request. For the backend, we'll have, let me explain it simply. We'll have just a connection of requests and responses so that anytime user interacts with the application, the server sends any request and gets back a response and displays the response. So as the first one being request, the second one should be response. For that, Slim PSR already comes with already set up system of sending requests and getting responses. Slim factory. Yep. As for now, we've set up all the imports that we'll be using during the creation of this project. I'm also gonna type app factory and define all the constructors just for now. And setting the base probably pass as, what would that be? That would probably be our social PHP public. Yep, something like this. So this is a beginning, our index file. Now let me just save it by pressing Ctrl S. We do actually have to also type app run in order for the application to be running. And nothing should be after that, I guess. So going back to includes file, we're going to have to create a couple of files inside. The first one, we have to connect our database first, right? So to do that, we have to create such a file that which will store the definition, the connection details, Constants.php. Let me call it something like this. Of course, open up the PHP, close it up, and these constants should have all the defines. Defines are, I mean, by just by the name, you can say that it defines something. In this case, it will define some details about MySQL connection. I'm gonna type first the username of the username of the owner of the database. In the case of localhost, it is actually being root, but when you set up your own server, you have to, of course, modify it, maybe by deleting a root user and creating another one, or just closing the root user. It's really up to you. I'm gonna go type the password. The password is actually uh, being nothing here. This comes by the default from XMPP that the user is root and the password is empty. If I'm not mistaken, this should come in a single quotation marks. And we also have the host. Of course, it is localhost, and define the last but not the least, which is the database name. In this case, it is social database. So just for now, as I said in the previous video, that we'll be creating login and registration pages. So this video will probably take a long time, but the time codes are going to be included as always. So I'm going to define 3 more things for the user connection. The first one is that the user is created. I'm going to say 101. These are the HTML codes. User exists, which is 102, and user creation failed, which is 103. We'll modify this constants file a bit later when we'll be specifying any more server details in order to send, for example, push notifications or just messages. So let's go ahead and create more files. So we have to store MySQL queries somewhere, right? So I'm gonna go create queries PHP file. This file is gonna contain all the queries we have. Yep. So should open up the PHP first, close it obviously. For this, we begin using classes, since there is this file is going to contain queries, we have to access the functions inside from our index file. So to do that, we have to have constructors and other details. So I'm gonna create a variable, which is shortcut from connection. Construct, this is the basic constructor. So I'm going to type require once in order to get access to the file which we're going to create. This file will actually connect our database. I'm going to call it connection handler PHP database. This variable that we just typed is going to take the constructor, the reference for the constructor, and it is going to pass it the method, to the method called connect, which is inside the connection handler file. So I think everything on this constructor is fine. And now I'm going to create more files. In this case, it is being connection handler.php. So as always, opening and closing PHP lines. Don't forget to always use the shortcut Ctrl S to save the file. So connection handler class is going to be created in this case. I'm going to create the connection variable and also the constructor. So this constructor basically will contain nothing. The method that will contain all the connection details. The connection process itself is going to be called connect, that we actually wrote in queries before. Include one to your name. We're gonna include constants. I think I wrote it right. Constants, which we created previously. The constants, as you remember, it contains all the information about our database. And now we have to connect it. So as we included only once per connection, we included the constants file. We have to take the variables from that file and process it. I'm gonna draw two different versions of MySQL now, and I totally recommend using not MySQL but MySQLi. It's better in terms of security, and I think the security is being the only issue as the differentiation of these two versions. I'm gonna take, I called it username, password, host name, database host, and database name. So I'm gonna check if the connection is successful. We're gonna do something if the connection is unsuccessful. We're gonna display error. So in this case, uh, if there is an error, which is specified by this method, we are going to, let's say, we are going to echo maybe. Echo failed to connect. Now let's specify the error that we have. So, right. And after that, we're gonna just break this method by returning null. So, if everything is okay though, I'm going to just return the variable. Okay, so just for now, the connection handler file is done. We're not gonna go over it for the rest 10 or 20 episodes, if there will be 10 or 20 episodes. I'm guessing there should be in the future. So now we should go back to our queries file, right? So now we can begin implementing login or register methods. So writing all the functions related to sending requests and getting responses is going to be repetitive, so that you can actually copy one function, and to implement the other you can just paste previously copied one, and simply just modify it, like modify a couple of codes, or just erase what's inside and insert the new one. So I'm gonna write two functions. The first is register, and the second one is login. Okay, just for the first time, um, as for the second episode, I'm gonna write the backend method, and on the next video, we'll be covering the implementation in Android Studio. So writing the method in PHP is one thing, and actually sending or getting responses and requests is the other thing, which we're gonna use the Android Studio for. Since in our accounts table, currently we have three values: ID, email, password. The last one should be encrypted, but we're not going to use encryption. We're going to use hashing. It's a totally different thing. So to register, we're going to use email and password variables, right? We have to check if the email exists. So in order to do that, we have to implement some method which checks either this field or that field actually exists. If it does, then do something. Give it an error or something other. So let's say if that exists or if that doesn't exist, we should do something. For hashing the password though, I'm going to use MD5 method. It is a well-known method for hashing. It hashes everything, even your best friend. MD5 password. So I'm going to use CMT variable here in order to specify, to define the connection. So for the connection, we can use prepare method, which doesn't connect at the first time, but prepares the query to be connected, to be executed, excuse me. So it comes with two lines of code. So the first one is being prepared, where we specify the query that should be executed. The second one is actually stmt execute. It directly executes this variable And in this case, the value of this variable is being whatever it's written inside the prepare. In this case, we're gonna insert something into our MySQL table. So the table is called accounts. Type insert into accounts. So in these brackets, we have to specify the column names that we have to insert into. In this case, we have email and password. And when user registers, when the user fills these two fields and presses register, the ID will automatically fill itself in ascending order. So let's specify two values, email and password. So the values are going to be question marks. These question marks, they take whatever the value you typed inside bint parameter method. Bint param. So currently we have two question marks, which is unspecified variable value that we have to obviously specify. To do that, we're gonna type marks, and we're gonna, since our email is being basically a string and the password is the same, I'm gonna type two S letters. The S means string. The first S goes to the first question mark, and the second goes to the second one. And we take the values, whatever values we specify in email or password. So we're writing these two variables. Great. Uh, this is giving us an error because we don't have anything inside our if. So once we typed everything, once the query is prepared, we can execute it. But we have these three definitions that we have to use somehow. So to do that, I'm going to create the second if condition. So basically, if this is executed, if this variable is executed, this query is executed successfully, we have to do something. I'm going to return that the user is actually created. Right? If it's not, you just say that user creation is totally failed. And if nothing happens at all of these two conditions, and if the values, the fields, they already exist, we're going to return that the user actually exists. Good. But as we know, these definitions, they are actually going from Constants file. We didn't include the file at all, right? So we have to include this. But there's no worry actually. It is already being included in connection handler. just making things up. So if the method, in this case, is being a register, if it has anything, if any field is actually currently existing in the table, we have to say that it exists. So we have to fill the condition. Let's say does exist by email. So if the email actually exists, we're going to return that the user exists, right? So we don't have this method, so we have to implement it. Right. Everything seems to be fine. Okay. So we can begin typing stmt connection prepare. We should select something from the table which has this email. If this something does actually exist, then we'll return something. So select ID, since the ID is auto increment, so that it will definitely exist if email does exist. So select ID from the table accounts, where our email is being whatever it is inside our bind parameter method. In this case, email is being string, and typing it. Next thing is to execute the method, and this select, it returns some variable. It is not something related to insert into. In this case, we have to store the result, uh, which is coming from this query. We have many methods in MySQL to store the result, to get the result, but in this case, we can use stmt store result method. stmt going to return the number of rows which are greater than 0. So in this case, if it returns some value with ID, and if the value is greater than null, it means that the email does already exist and the user is already registered. But if you want your social media application to have to allow users to enter two identical emails, you can go ahead and do that. There's nothing bad about it. It really depends on how you design the application. Now, as you can see, this register method is complete. The next one is login, um, which is a bit more complex than the register method. Mm. Upon the filling up this function inside our queries file, we have to also fill it inside index, because as you remember, user doesn't have any access to includes folder. it should have an access only to the public folder, and even inside the public folder, some of the files should be restricted, right? So I'm going to go ahead and create, first of all, the login method inside of curious file, and then we'll go to the public folder. So simply email and password. Um, After that, the password is hashed. It is hashed, um, and everything else is almost identical to the register method. We have to prepare the query first, then we have to pin the parameters, then we have to execute everything. Um, can go ahead and copy this method. Um, Select an ID where the email is this one, and in this case we have to also specify the password. The password is being this. Okay, that should be it. So whenever the user types these two fields, it should give either true or false. If the data is correct, it gives us true, and the method, whatever method is specified for the login function inside our index.php file, is going to be executed. So now we can go to our index file. Index file should contain some additional imports. The first one is being required. So we require ready packages. This autoload PHP, I mean, by the name of it, as you can guess, autoloads or project or backend project includes curious PHP. Okay, includes. I think we don't have to specify. Did we specify it on the? No, we didn't. So we don't need it inside our index file because it is already in queries. I was talking about the connection handler, the constants, and everything like that. So how do we write the method inside our index.php file? Well, it is slightly different than it is in queries because we also have to specify the app variable. This is very important because the app variable should basically execute some method specified in as it is in Slim framework. We have many methods: post, get, put, and whatever, etc., etc. So mostly we'll be using post method and get method. So in register method, I'm going to use the post method. So just say register function the function which will take request and give back the response, right? Okay, so as it is in the queries, because we asked if the value actually exists, we have to also ask if the user really entered something in the field. If the parameter that he entered in the field is actually being available. So our uh, values, no, are params available, filling up the condition, shall take an array with email with email and password. As by default, it requests. We have to use requests always in order to get the field that the user is entered. For example, in Android Studio, we'll be setting up text fields, edit texts, whatever, and we have to get something, the value from that text fields. So to do that, we're using requests. The good thing about Slim framework is that it already parses everything. So you have to just write the methods and anything only related to your project. So you don't have to worry about the other things. So I would say email is request data and it is email and the password, of course. Now I'll tell you quickly the scheme. Let me open the paint. Let me draw something. So imagine that this is a phone and we have, in our cases, we have two things, which is being the first one being email and the second one is being password. Whenever the user feels this and presses this button, the values from this will be taken. We will also specify it and we'll also discuss about it on the next video. We'll be using Android Studio. The next one, we will not be using it, unfortunately, in this video. It takes the value of it. The Slim framework using whatever you use, Retrofit or RxJava or both even, it will parse the value automatically for you. And the parsed value goes to the server because the server actually requested it. So since server requested, as we said, email and password fields, uh, the value from this goes right into this. And as we set up the condition, if it satisfies the condition, since this is being request, if the condition is satisfied and all the fields are successfully, let's say, imported, then it gives back the response to Android Studio. It gives back the response. The response could be any value that you prefer. You would even send the text, or you would send some variables from MySQL queries. And while the request has been sent, this this is our index file. The index file goes for the queries. It sends the values from Android Studio taken to, in this case, the function is being called register. MySQL gets the values. Using these values, it executes the query that we wrote and gives back to the index the value that we specified. In this case, it gives us three options. Either the user is created, or failed, or the user already exists. So it is the circle of actions, I would say. Right? So I hope I explained it well. I'm really bad at explaining things. I'm trying my best. So now we are requesting things. To use our queries file, and we have to specify the constructor from it. We are attaching for the value of this database variable. So I'm gonna type a new variable called response data. I'm gonna say that it is an array, and the new more variable that I have to write is the result variable. So as you know, we attached this database variable into queries, and using this we can execute whatever method is inside our queries. In this case, the method that we want is register. Register applies then two arguments, email and password. And email is password are written here. So as you can see, we first request, then we execute the method inside the queries with our new values taken from these requests, and we give back something. If we say that our result is equal to user created, if the user is successfully created, we should return something. In this case, we are returning response data, because response data, as we already said, it is an array. So it means that it can take whatever values, multiple values. In this case, I'm going to go and say that the error response is false, so there is no error. And account, this account is there's a new response that will be sending to Android Studio to the user back. So we should send uh, an additional uh, account details. We should send them back because whether the user enters to the application, whether it registers, it has to take the values back in order for the data to be filled when he successfully enters. But we're not going to do that just for now because the Android Studio part comes on the next video. So I'm going to say that results, if the result creation failed, I'm going to return error. I'm going to say that it is true. And also, if the result is that the user already exists, to I can actually paste it already. I'm gonna return error. Okay, so now we have to write this method, right? To write this method, for that I'm gonna use function because we are getting whatever the value is inside the function. I'm not gonna use the application variable because we are not connecting it to the front end. Okay, so let me say that this is going to be under the utils command line and parameters. Let's say that the variable of type boolean is false, or fields field, and the whatever the value is after this field, right? Oh no, no. How should I implement this? Let us take just a simple field. No. The request does already exist, so we have to request params. Yep. I'm gonna use for each loop so that parameters as fields, just just come on, field. If I'm going to use the method called isSet, which basically means if the value exists, if the value is given or provided, it request params field. Okay, or let me say that the string length of trimmed string value, it basically cuts off all the white spaces. Request params with the value of field being taken from params. We specify it as an array, so the loop goes as long as the array is finished. So as long as it is finished, and if the given value is equal to null, or excuse me, is not equal to null or less than null, we'll say that the error is true, and the error fields are actually the fields and whatever it is after the field right now. Yes, this will work more efficient. So if we have any error, response array response error equals true, response message equals to whatever the value you would write inside of it. Write that params or fields that the user entered um, use also substring method of error fields. So substring method returns whatever the part of the string you specified, and of whatever string that you specified. In this case, we want to return this the values at this place, at these coordinates from error field value. So the fields missing, empty, whatever. So echo JSON. The next thing that I want to talk about is JSON. We'll get into that more in the next video, since we'll be using that a lot in Android Studio. Especially we'll be using JSON and JSON. G, which goes from like from this G, like triple G or whatever. Yep, I'm gonna return false and return true as for this case. So this is actually a template variable. I think if you search it in Google, you'll find many more alternatives. The way is basically provided simpler, or I just say it as it is and I wrote it as it is. Um, okay, I think that's it for the register part. That might be actually it for the register part. The last thing though that we have to include is the finish line. the finish line, which is provided already by a Slim framework. I would even say that is supported by it. So we're gonna type response to for the response to get the body to encode it as for JSON and send the response of that. Right. So you may ask, uh, how do we actually access this? Well, the answer is a bit longer than you would expect because we cannot access localhost methods to test it. We have to actually go for some alternatives. But in this case, you may search how to open ports first in your router. After you open ports for the specific user, in this case it is the client is being your PC basically. When you open the ports, you'll be able to use your local PC as some sort of web server and access it from any part of the world if your IP is identified. So to identify the IP address, I'm going to use to-IP. They also include the link. I would actually give the instruction of how to open the port or how to use your PC as some sort of a server. The reason that I can't do that because I have a different router. So the routers they're always different, and you have to look and search in Google for your own. So there are, there are literally thousands of methods how to open for ports. Example, let's say that you have TP-Link router or whatever router you have. I'm living in CIS region, so this type of router is actually pretty widely spread. So as you can see, you have thousands of tutorials. It's pretty simple, not something complicated. Once you've opened your port specifically for your PC, you have to go to this site or any other site to know the IP address of yours. I'm gonna copy this. I'm gonna copy it. I'm gonna go for Postman. This is a really hands-on useful tool for you to test your PHP methods, to execute the methods that you wrote. So once you're at Postman, once you've successfully registered, you may go ahead and create a workspace. Give it any name that you want. Just follow the instructions. It's not that complicated to give it a time for. So after that, you can go ahead and create new collection. You can also give it any file. So since the method that we wrote is post, we go ahead and type HTTP. We type the IP address of ours. I think we should also type the port, which is being 80 by default. Or 446 or even 3306. You have to look for your own. It is being social PHP. Oh, Why they call it social PHP? I would call it social API. I don't know. Okay. Public, and the method that we wrote is register. Register. As I said, we have to give two fields, enter two fields to the body of the request. So go to body, we go to the form encoded. The first is being email, the value, give it the value that you want, test gmail.com, let's say. The description is not required, and the password, whatever password that you want. Test. Let's see if it gives us any errors, or yep, it gives us any errors. Oh, I just noticed that you see that debugging is always useful. In this case, the connection handler we have here is I made a stupid mistake. I wrote TB host twice. We have to use TB password. That was really the stupidest mistake that I could ever make. So as we can see, the Postman works well. The email and password are written here, and the error is false because the user is not created, and we should have it inside our accounts folder, right? Excuse me, table. Um, we have it inside our table. This is the first row. As you can see, our auto increment works perfectly in this case, and the password is hashed. It is not encrypted, it is hashed. So on the next video, we'll be talking about implementing the front end in actually sending responses and or sending requests and getting responses within Android Studio. So thanks for watching. I hope you gained something new from this video. If you want to add something, just go ahead and type in comments down below. And as I said, all the links are down below to my Patreon, to my Discord channel. And till the next video, have a good day.